From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City. From planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space. A podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm going to shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
You know, Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battleline Podcast.
The switch is on. Battleline Podcast. I'm Ian Scotto.
I'm Chris. Who am I? Am I Chris? No, I'm Tano. I'm Chris Peranto. That's what we do here because it's no holds barred. Just me being my dumbass self as usual again.
But yeah, every week on here we bring on different inspirational guests from all different backgrounds, actors, musicians, a lot of special operations military vets with Chris's background, CIA contractors, and we talk about overcoming obstacles. We also talk about the Second Amendment. We talk about guns, gear, all that good stuff. We have Ben Morgan coming on this episode, which I'm really excited for. 69 episodes in. Can't believe it.
Did you say 69?
69.
Come on, we can't let that pass. We got to be our disgusting adolescent selves. 69, dudes. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, let Ben Morgan. He is 69 on here. But yeah, the first thing I wanted to start with, because I just thought it was pretty crazy this past week. If you listen to the last episode, I clearly told you guys I know nothing about finance. Don't listen to my financial advice. So if you lost money due to me or something, it's not due to me. I am not Charles Payne. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But all right, I'm going to give you guys the background and everything. We spoke about the Clubhouse app last week, and when I saw how innovative this thing was, I was like, man, this is going to be a huge company. I felt the same way like when I hopped on Fiverr, and Fiverr during this whole pandemic, the stock has shot up like, I don't know, 300 or 600%, something like that. So I felt the same thing about Clubhouse. I was like, this thing is going to be huge. So I went to see the stock, and the stock was definitely on the rise, on the trajectory of a big rise. And I spoke about it on the podcast when we recorded on Friday. Which was starting to go up on Friday. Over the, so I'm trying to think of the dates here. I think it was over the weekend. Elon Musk was saying, hey, I'm going to go on Clubhouse and everybody be there. And he also tweeted out the stock, the name of the stock for a Clubhouse media group. So I think a lot of people were hopping on the stock. Monday comes around, the stock goes from about $5 to I think $15. It's this huge rise, and people are crediting that to Elon Musk. I have friends and family who got on the stock, and they're like, wow, I just made all this money. This is huge. But the stock throughout the day went from about $15 to $10. It's kind of hopping all over the place. People are wondering why. And I have a lot of friends who do work in finance, being in New York, and they're like, yeah, this is looking way too volatile for me to stay on, but I'm gonna get out now, and I'm gonna make about, I know people who made between like $3,000 and $5,000 on this in one day, and they were like, "Thanks for letting me know. I'm getting out now, though." I personally didn't get anything because I was waiting for my money to clear in TD Ameritrade, which takes like way more days than I realized. Anyway, the stock closes at about $10. I have friends that are like, "I should have gotten out at 15, but whatever. I made money. This is cool." Right around the time the stock closes, news articles start popping up everywhere, basically stating headlines like Elon Musk tweets out the symbol for Clubhouse for the stock, but it's the wrong Clubhouse. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This is really strange. Basically, it turns out there was another stock that had absolutely nothing to do with Clubhouse. I don't even think had anything to do with social media. And they were riding the wave of this app and changed the name of their company from something else to Clubhouse. And people assumed Clubhouse Media Group. If you looked at the news articles, it said the amount of impressions it was getting. And so I assumed this, along with Elon Musk, along with many others, this was Clubhouse Media Group. This stock it's like a fake stock, man. It went public right around the same time that Clubhouse went public as an app, and it is just not the same stock. It's a completely different thing. It turns out this Clubhouse was bringing in zero revenue, was not making any money. This was almost like a Dogecoin type thing. This was like a TikTok house in California that were riding the coattails of the Clubhouse app. So I'm telling people, yeah, you probably want to get out now. They drop a press release Tuesday right before the stock market goes public, and they're like, we're very excited for what Clubhouse has on the horizon. And sure enough, that thing drops even lower than when people went on. So if you got out at the right time, you made money. If you didn't, this was an extremely shady company. Someone even tweeted me, if I could find it, the timeline of what went on with this Clubhouse stock, which once again is not the app. And it's very suspicious. All right. So yes, someone tweeted me whose actual name on here is Clubhouse app is not public. January 19th, employee stock offering announcement. January 20th, name change to Clubhouse Media Groups. They changed the name, changed its company service to social media management. So it was a totally different company. February 1st, uploaded shareholder update on Reddit. Zero revenue last quarter. Zero. These are the facts. Evil, horrible, personal opinion. So Clubhouse app has nothing to do with the stock. There is apparently a stock for the technology that created the Clubhouse app. Not surprisingly, started in China. It's Chinese stock, much like TikTok and all these, it's Chinese technology. But this is not the same thing. And I don't know what to say, man. It's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. And apparently this is the second time this has happened with Elon Musk, where he tweeted out a stock symbol, and it turned out it was not the same stock that people assumed it was. Very weird.
That's why I just don't even get into it. I got nothing on it because I just stay out of I used to invest in stock stuff, and it's just, for me, with money, I like the even keel. I don't care if the returns are 2% or what, but it's always going to have a return on it. But I don't really pay attention to the stock because I do have my retirements, but it's based in solid stuff that the government's not going to let fail. But the return is minimal, but it's still a return. All I know is that I won't ever invest in a particular stock. Even if Ian said, this is the 100%, nope, not doing it. I'm not a good gambler. Even when I have all the chips on my side, I'll lose them all like that. So I would just rather play it safe. And like I told you, we were texting about that. I know. And I said, hey, my money's in properties and the green stuff. That's it. I don't have silver. I don't have gold, which at a time that was wonderful to have. And who knows now with everything.
Silver and gold will always, it'll never crash. It's finite.
But fine. And that's the thing with property as well, which, I don't have a ton of properties, but I have a couple, but it's for retirement. And then I have my old IRAs that have sat there for years and just collected interest over the years for like 20 some years. So
yeah, the app itself is pretty damn cool, though. And then Elon Musk the next day was like, I'm going to take a break from Twitter for a while. But he didn't. He did.
You can't. Dude, you can't. People that crave power, they also crave the attention. They cannot get off social media. It's impossible.
I like Elon Musk, though. I do. I know he's the richest man in the world right now. But of those people, he actually is like the most, I don't know, man. I like him. And a lot of those people I don't. I think he's just an interesting character, and I think he's brilliant.
Wasn't he going to have he was building the first plane to go to the moon, or first jet?
They've gone to SpaceX has gone to space. So.
But he was going to start doing like round trip tickets to the moon. I thought, am I right on that? Because again, sorry, man.
it'll probably happen. We'll see, man. But I do know we got to get to Ben Morgan. Before we do, guys, you got to check out Fort Scott Munitions. If you're a shooter, if you're a hunter, they're the best on the market. Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, as well as direct online through fortscottmunitions.com. Go to FORTSCOTTMUNITIONS.com. If they're sold out on anything that you're looking for, they're restocking. Check the site like every day. And if you go to our description on this episode, you'll see the link right there. So fortscottmunitions.com. Use exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of the Battleline Podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. Go there now, fortscottmunitions.com, promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Everything that you get, that includes merchandise, all ammo, everything else. Joining us for the first time on the podcast, Ben Morgan, retired Army Ranger and retired private security contractor. And I would really, I have to say, I'm kind of embarrassed that like 69 episodes in.
You're 69.
You're number 69.
69!
That we're finally having you on, because Ben is really, I mean, next to Tonto, like the number 2 guy at KPI LLC between Battleline Tactical and now Tonto Vodka, as well as your own company, Morgan Timing. Your story was documented in this book, The Patriots Creed, Inspiration and Advice for Living a Heroic Life, which I kind of brushed up on yesterday and read your whole section in preparation for this interview. But yeah, we're both really excited to have you on. We've wanted to have you on since episode 1, but things just happened and we're finally doing it.
Yeah, it is. Time flies, you know. I mean, even when things are this screwed up, it still seems like, you know, I mean, how did the last year go by so fast, but at the same time seem like it took forever? It is kind of a strange thing. And yeah, it's pretty amazing though that you guys are 69 episodes in. Because it does.
69. My adolescent self keeps letting. Yeah, I just keep saying 69. It's funny.
69!
I know we're gonna kill that joke, huh? Nail it shut. Have to bury it when the show's done. Okay, Tony, quit saying 69. Stop it.
It's no, but it's fun to finally have you on, man. I definitely want to get into your interest in firearms, which led you to doing what you do now. But before we even get into that, I didn't know until I read Chris's book, really, that you guys grew up in the same town and both ended up going into Ranger Battalion.
I know from the town of what was it? What was it, like 25,000? No, it was bigger than that at that time. How many people? It was real small though. It wasn't huge.
No, I mean, you get the whole valley where you have Palisade, Grand Junction, Orchard Mesa, the Redlands, Fruta, and all that. And everybody just kind of ends up calling it Grand Junction. But there are little bitty towns within that valley in itself. And yeah, I don't know. I think Grand Junction in the whole valley is probably, back then, was probably 70,000 people, give or take.
That, which was weird for 2 guys to go to Ranger Battalion that close together out of the gate there. Yeah, he went first though, guys. So I'll just let him have that. He did go before me. He set the example.
Yeah, it was probably a lot of like because I had the same recruiter that Chris did. That guy, Sergeant Watts.
Sergeant Watts. Yep.
And he probably told Chris that this moron made it. So you'll be fine.
Do you really want to know what Watts said? Go on, Sergeant Watts.
And that's what he said.
He's an E8 now. He actually came to a book signing in Alabama 2-3 years ago. He retired not as a sergeant major, but as a master sergeant. Okay. Great guy. Sergeant Watts was, and that he's one of the guys who allowed me to get back in after I got booted out the first time because he was messing with my paperwork. But yeah, he said, this little runt's going in. You got to go. You got to go to Ranger Battalion. This little, I mean, dude's like 150 pounds. He drinks too much. It's like, yeah. So I was like, well, shit, if he could do it, I can do it. So yeah. That was fun. Sergeant Watts was a good guy.
He actually, he had to put up with me twice because I got basically kicked out of the Army before I even got in the Army.
We talked a little bit about it in the book, a little bit about your dysfunction.
Yeah, and they threaten everybody with that fraudulent enlistment stuff. And everybody's like, oh, that's kind of BS. You don't have to worry about that. No one ever gets hemmed up for fraudulent enlistment. All
right, you got to tell everybody what happened. Tell everybody out there what happened to your fraudulent enlistment, you freaking criminal.
Yes. So fraudulent enlistment is a real thing, and they will kick you out of MEPS, kind of the reception center, if you get caught. And I had gotten in quite a bit of trouble as a kid, and I got hemmed up for stealing car stereos, and so I had to go through this whole Scared Straight program, which is a whole nother kind of crazy story into itself. Being 17, 18 years old, like 130 pounds, walking through a state penitentiary there's no security with you. You're with another inmate. And, the inmate I was with, I mean, he killed like 2 dudes, and he's like my partner in prison. And we're walking around in the state penitentiary down in Canyon City, which, most people don't know. There's some serious prisons in Colorado.
Yeah.
That, house some of the worst of the worst. They have that Supermax in Florence and stuff. And this is all right around in the same area. So I'm walking around in this prison with this guy I went through the whole program, and they said it was expunged from my record because I was a minor. Well, when I went to join the Army, they ask you all those questions, and I was like, well, it's not on my record. It's been expunged. They're not going to know about it. So I didn't tell them, and they found out. And so, I'm at MEPS, and I'm going through the stuff. I'm supposed to leave like the next day for basic training. And this captain calls me in his office, and he kind of starts reading me the riot act about all this stuff. And, and he said, pack your shit, you're going back home. And I had to call my dad in this guy's office and tell him, and I'm sure my dad was, it had to be like the biggest kick to the face to my mom and dad, because they were like, we're finally rid of him. And he's off in the Army, and it's the Army's problem now. And I had to call and say, hey, I'm coming back. I got kicked out of the Army before I was even let in. And it took like a whole nother, probably 8 or 9 months before I could go back, and they let me kind of re-enlist again. And so, Sergeant Watts probably really hated me.
All right. But is that what, did he have to redo all that? You had to redo paperwork? What'd you have to redo to get back in?
Well, I had to, they kind of like put you on probation, and to where you have to have like 6 months without any trouble or any of that kind of stuff. And, you kind of have to re-sign a new contract, because I was originally supposed to be a 13 Fox. And then when I went back in, there was no 13 Fox slots. So I ended up with the straight 11 Bravo option 40, whatever it's called, the Ranger contract. So I went back in as an infantry guy. You kind of have to start the whole thing over and redo it, and not get in any trouble for 6 months, which for me at that time, that was a big thing.
It was fun.
Just not getting any trouble for 6 months. And I was an idiot. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. I was just a troublemaker,
And And that's why we I wanted him in the book. It wasn't really the stuff military. He did great, but it was him growing up as a truant. And I wanted high school kids to look at this guy and be like, hey, look at this truant that just drinks all the time, is a total hellion, breaking into cars, and he still managed to fix himself and succeed. And that was the reason I put him in the Patriots Creed. It wasn't like I said, it wasn't for the Ranger Battalion experience, which is, you want to talk about that too, but it was you growing up and how much shit you actually, because you had great, I know his family, he has great parents, both his parents in Vietnam, but tell us, it's because we get kids that are thinking about going in the military. We get kids that that are having issues listening to the show. When I say kids, I'm using that respectfully, in the teenage years. So tell them a little bit about your growing up.
Well,
Dude,
you know,
just don't get yourself put in prison again. Don't like incriminate yourself for on the show.
I think the statute of limitations is run out.
Okay, good.
I didn't get caught doing, but you know, I've tried to kind of figure some of that stuff out as I've gotten older. Like, why did I do these things? Why was I, you know? And I think a lot of it had to do with just the fact that I was a pretty shy kid, you know, and I had moved from Louisiana to Colorado, and I was the new kid in 8th grade. And so, you know, you're the new kid. You're not. You don't have any physical attributes or anything that makes you stand out to where people would be like, oh, you know, he's the cool kid. I wasn't tall. I was skinny. You know, I had acne. It was kind of like, you know, and being new is hard. You know, it's always hard. And so I was the new kid in 8th grade. And then I was also the new kid in high school because I went to West, which fed into Junction, and I ended up going to Fruita High School. So, you know, being really shy and things like that. And, you know, when I started drinking, I think by drinking like that, it brought me out of that being shy set kind of shell that I was in. And I was like, hey, man, I like this. And people liked me when I was never the bad drunk. I was the fun drunk kind of guy. So who doesn't like fun guy? And so I just kept drinking. I was like, hey, man, this is pretty cool. You know, like 2-3 beers in, I'm party time, you know, let's go have fun. And then, you know, I think the criminality kind of side, I mean, not that underage drinking is not against the law, but the actual real criminal behavior came from, I just liked the excitement of it. It was just the kind of the rush of it all, you know, getting chased by the police. And, you know, I mean, you got 5 sheriff cars behind you at 100 miles an hour and you're going down Broadway with your hair on fire, you know, at 3 o'clock in the morning getting chased by the police. I mean, it was fun. It was exciting. I mean, it's stupid, but it just kind of, it gave me that big sense of, man, I liked it. I liked that sensation of running from the police and sneaking around, stealing stuff. And it just brought a lot of excitement. And I mean, that's why I did it. I mean, I didn't need any of this stuff. It wasn't like I was, you know, stealing out of necessity. I just liked the excitement of it, getting away with it. I honestly, if I could have brought all that stuff back 2 hours later, I would have been like, here you go. I don't need it. I'll be back maybe in 2 or 3 weeks and try to steal it from you again. Because I just enjoy the excitement of all that stuff. You know, which is stupid, but it was just kind of the way my brain was wired, that I liked that rush, that excitement, the thrill of the chase and getting away with it. And,
yeah,
you know.
The surprising thing to people would probably be, I mean, how Chris said that you were raised right, great parents. Like, you know, people would probably look at you and say, like, who raised this kid?
Oh, yeah. You would have thought I was raised by wolves. But, you know, my parents were both, you know, Vietnam veterans. My mom was a nurse at a field hospital, and my dad was a medevac pilot. You know, they're both college educated people. They're both, you know, intelligent. They, you know, but they were at work, you know, and that was kind of the way my generation was raised, in the sense that we kind of raised ourselves. You know, they used to call us latchkey kids.
Latchkey kids. Like yeah. Yep.
You know, my parents, I mean, we weren't wealthy. You know, it wasn't like we were living the good life. My parents worked, you know, extremely, extremely hard. And people were like, well, where were your parents? I was like, well, they were at work. That's where everybody's parents were when we were growing up. They were at work. And we were just kind of like, hey, man, let's go. We figured out and kind of raised ourselves. And I just didn't do a very good job of it.
Well, and that's where I think when people say, you know, the environment causes a child to be a criminal, the environment says that, oh yeah, he's criminal because his parents were, he's seeing it all the time, or he's raised in an abusive family or so forth. And that's why I liked your story for the book, because you weren't. And it showed to me that even as a kid, you have a choice, and you know right or wrong. You know, nobody has to tell you, even if your parents aren't there, you know what's right or wrong. And it's your choice to either can do the right or wrong and then continue on, or fix yourself. And one of the ways to do that, it was to go in the military for at least for our generation. But that's why I do like, because you figured it out. You made that choice. I just can't stand when people say that the environment raised this kid. The environment made him what he wanted to be. No, he still did. He had a choice. You knew when you were drinking that 8th beer and getting in the car that was wrong. You knew, but you still did it. But you still knew. You knew the choice. It wasn't the environment that fucked you up there. It was the choice that you made. But you overcame it and the military helped, even though it almost didn't. Yeah. If you could talk a little bit about what was your decision? And I know this, people out there don't, but what was your decision? Why did you decide to join the military, and why did you decide to join Ranger Battalion and go to the 3rd best battalion in Ranger Regiment, 1st Battalion? I slipped that one by you, dude.
I understand you guys from Central, weren't really taught how to count, and one comes and then there's 2nd and 3rd. There's a reason the guy that's in 1st place gets at the top of the podium. Because the 1st is better than the 2nd.
I ain't gonna lie, guys. I do wish, man. I wish I'd been in the sun and been on the beach during the down times. I know it sucked out there at first bet, but it still was better than freezing in July, running and going, what the hell? It's 50 degrees out and it's raining in July and I'm freezing my nuts off. So, but I got to make fun.
We had it pretty good. I mean, within regards to being right there in Savannah, Georgia. Yeah. Tybee Island, the beach was 30 minutes away, and so we had a pretty good place to spend our downtime right there in that vicinity. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, almost my entire family has been in the service for generations, going all the way back to the American Revolution. So we have, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the whole thing. I mean, Korea. And so there was kind of that
Lieutenant Dan kind of thing. Lieutenant Dan, you're Lieutenant Dan. Just keep going in.
But we all lived, Yeah. Lieutenant Dan's family was all killed off.
Yeah, you're right.
We had all kind of survived. My grandparents and great-grandparents, they all survived. I had a great-grandfather that was a infantry lieutenant in World War I. Spent his time in the trenches in France, and there's, and it's kind of strange. He was an enormous man. And so there's pictures of him in those trenches with all the other guys just really being friggin' miserable. And he's like this giant dude. It was like, that had to be a dangerous place to be when you're like 6'6" in a little trench, and so there was that kind of family connection to the military, specifically to the Army. My uncles, and I had an uncle that was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, or flew. He has an interesting story too, but so I had a lot of family connections to the Army. And at the time, one of my uncles was in the Ranger Regiment. He was the senior fire support officer for the regiment. So he was a major lieutenant colonel, obviously living a very, very different life than an E2 in the Ranger Regiment. But he had that connection, and just kind of, hearing him tell the stories about it and listening to it. And he sent me a video that had, I'm drawing a blank on his name, Colonel Grange, when he was regimental commander. And it was a video about him and the whole regiment, and it was, General Downing was in it. And it just kind of intrigued me that it was like, and I'd read a bunch of Tom Clancy books, and I was kind of, creating this little fantasy in my head about, I'm going to go in Ranger Regiment. We're going to go sneak all over the world and kill bad guys. I was like, that sounds like about as exciting as life can get, And so I was like, hey, let's go do that, And in two, I was kind of in this place where I was like, well, what else am I going to do? I know my situation is kind of what most people would look at as the stereotypical reason why people join the military, which isn't true, but in my case, it was true. That it was kind of like, back in the day, it was like, you're going to jail or you're going in the service. And that was kind of the way I I looked at it and was like, you're either going to end up, in prison full time, not just on this, scared straight program. This is going to be where you end up, dude, if you don't get your head straight. And so I looked at it as, kind of sentencing myself to that, like, you need to go in the service and fix your life kind of thing, because you're on this path where you're going to end up in prison. And going into that prison and spending that time with that guy who was sentenced to prison, and talking to him and kind of starting to realize his life and my life were kind of on the same path. At different points in our life. I was much younger, but listening to him talk and how he ended up in prison for, double murder, I was like, dude, I could see myself ending up exactly where he did, just by the lifestyle that I was living. And I was like, it doesn't take long in a maximum security state penitentiary to realize you do not want to spend 5 minutes here, let alone 15, 20, 30 years of your life.
Yeah.
It's horrible. When people talk about the prison system, I'm like, it's not harsh enough. I'm like, dude, you go in there for 5 minutes and come back and tell me that this is not a punitive system.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? And so that, the connection to the Army was where I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And it was a family kind of connection to the Army specifically. And that's why I chose the Army, and my uncle's connection to the Ranger Regiment is why I chose the regiment. It was like, this is, I guess I kind of always look at anything as a challenge that, you always want to be the best at it, so it's like, well, what's the thing I can do right now in the Army that puts me in the best company, with the best soldiers, the best leadership, getting to go do real world missions. That's what I wanted to do, was, like I said, go around into foreign countries, sneak around, kill bad guys. That was what I wanted. That's why I joined the Army, that and fix my life. But, I wanted to go do those things. I wanted the adventure. Because like I said, that's what I enjoyed about all that bad behavior, was the excitement of it. And it doesn't really get much more exciting than jumping out of airplanes and fast roping out of helicopters on the rooftops in the dark. And that's pretty wild shit, man. And well, that was kind of why I did that, and because I knew where I was going. I was going right back into that prison.
Well, I think all the guys that that go in, or whatever companies they have now, as far as battalion, everybody's an adrenaline junkie at some point, in some aspect. Some guys are all the way and they can't turn it off, where other guys, they want it, but they can always shut it down. I think you learn that though as you're there as well, when to turn the adrenaline off and when to turn it on. Where when you first get there, and I think that's why a lot of guys burn out at battalion when they get there, or get RFS before they get to school, is because the adrenaline stays too high. And that also leads to the anticipation of you getting smoked up, which makes it 10 times worse than if you just would take the beating like it's, hey, I'm just going to qualify on the tree and scrape the shit out of my nuts for 30 minutes. It's just but guys' adrenaline stays up so high that they just burn out and they do something stupid and they get RFS'd out. I was saying, I agree the same way with it, as far as going in and say, well, challenge myself, but I want to feel what that adrenaline is, and then learning how to control that adrenaline as you get older within the system. And that goes battalion. They do a great job because they give guys responsibility. As a leader, you have to be able to control that adrenaline. Now it's got to be a controlled adrenaline burst, not the E2, E3, even the E4 adrenaline burst can keep going all the time, because you really just have to do what you're told. You don't have to think, just do what you're told.
Yeah. And I felt, going, the kind of path that I ended up on, where I was an enlisted guy in the regiment, and then, getting out, going to college and coming back in and ending up an infantry officer. And I kind of looked at my job as an infantry officer was to, give my guys the tools that they needed to accomplish what I was asking them to accomplish, And I'm a big, I like to drive my decisions based off of commander's intent, as opposed to, just specifically mission statements. And so, but you're right. I looked at it as, come to me with your plan and let me make sure you're not, doing things that are illegal, because and dude, you know what it's like. Battle runs private 4s and young E5s. They come up with some, crazy shit ass ideas, and you're like, dude, whoa, hold on. You can't do that. Somebody's going to get killed or whatever the case may be. And so seeing both sides of it, where I was like, yeah, I was that, E2, E3, Tab Spec 4 in Ranger Regiment, where, yeah, you're like, a dog on the end of the leash, where you're just pulling and pulling, like, I want to go. But yeah, it is kind of that leadership's in being more mature, not saying that you have to be an officer to be a leader. That's certainly not true. But the more mature NCOs and things like that, they're there to kind of rein those guys in, kind of to pull back on that leash a little bit, kind of get that adrenaline under control. And as you mature, you realize, okay, the adrenaline, you have to learn how to turn it on and turn it off, because you're right. Otherwise, you're going to end up, down in River Street fighting 6 dudes, getting the shit beat out of you just because, for the excitement of it, or just running down the street, naked, streaking through downtown Tampa, because it's like, hey,
and that's never happened. Both those things have never happened to you.
No, I never ran naked down the street in Tampa on rush hour at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That never happened.
If you guys, the listeners, pick up the Patriots Creed, you're going to learn more about this, which, we urge all you to pick up if you haven't read already. But the interesting thing with you from there is that you had just a plethora of injuries that kind of sidelined you. And I'd like to get into that, as well as, you were texting me before we did this interview, getting into veterans' mental health, which is something that you really had to overcome because of those injuries.
I did. And then, being a guy that is always kind of trying to dig into the information as to why things are the way they are, is there a way to fix it, make it better? I can really get focused on little things, which sometimes is not a good thing. But I can just, it's like, excuse me, not that it's dumb, but it is kind of like a small detail sometimes, and I'll just get locked into that thing, and sometimes I just can't let it go. And, when I got hurt, I kind of had a series of a series of injuries kind of going on.
In our line of work, though, injury, it really leads to other injury. Once you get one injury, injuries are contagious. It's just how it is. Yeah. That's the lifestyle. Yeah. So, I saw that.
And I actually had just gotten out of the Army the second time in 2006. And I was working on that Darcy contract down in Arkansas. It was in Arkansas, right? Yeah, Arkansas.
Yeah, our Direct Action Response Center. Yeah.
And I started developing this really painful sensation in my feet. And I was like, what's going on? And I thought, you're outgrew your shoes, or your shoes are worn out, just get some better shoes and you'll be fine. And and that didn't work. It didn't do anything. I was like, what the hell? And then it got progressively worse. And it got to the point where it felt like, honestly, it felt like somebody had just strapped me to a table and beat the shit out of the bottoms of my feet with like a cane. I mean, after like a 20, 30 mile road march or movement where your feet are just smoked.
Yes.
And that's the way my feet felt all the time. If I, from the moment I got out of bed to the moment I got back into bed, I was in pain, like not mild discomfort. I mean, it was pain. It was a distraction kind of pain constantly. And they kept telling me, oh, you have plantar fasciitis. So, okay, go through the process of trying to fix plantar fasciitis. Well, so they would build me the custom orthotics, which are made out of the really hard, rigid plastic and have the arch in them and all that kind of stuff. And
I've used those before. It's kind of weird, right? Having this like hard thing in your shoe.
It is. And they say, oh, you have to slowly get used to it. Wear it for an hour one day, 2 hours the next day. So I'm going through the whole process and I'm like, this is agonizing. I mean, and, looking back on it now, of course it was agonizing. I'm standing on an extremely hard piece of plastic. I even had some that were made out of, I think, Kevlar or something. So, I mean, extremely hard surface to stand on, and you have nerve damage in your feet. So it's making it worse. But, being the good soldier that I was, is like, well, these are the instructions, do what you're told, and it'll get better. And it didn't. So, and then I started going, overseas. And when you're gone for 3.5 months at a time, the last thing you really want to do when you come home is have a series of doctor's appointments and things like that. And so you kind of just.
And I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in here for the audience. When you say going overseas as a contractor, right? Not
correct.
As a ranger.
Correct. Yeah. No. My time overseas was as a contractor, and when I say contractor, I did instruction, where I went overseas in Iraq and I was an instructor. I taught, as much as you can teach the Iraqi army how to do something. That was what I did on one trip. I also taught American soldiers that were in Iraq at the same time. And I really enjoyed that side of it. Training the Iraqis, not so much. And then I went back over and I did the high threat protection for the State Department. So, when I talk about my time overseas, I absolutely do not compare what I did to what active duty military, National Guard guys that were deployed overseas, what they went through. I absolutely do not want to try to say that I went through what they went through. Not the same thing whatsoever. So, there's a lot of guys that were over there as truck drivers in the contract world, and then they come back to the States and they're like, I was this badass contractor dude. And you're like, dude, you were a truck driver in a really place.
You know what I was thinking of? I remember Jack Murphy saying this. The people who wear the T-shirts that are like, I am the sheepdog.
I am the
99% of the time, he's like, they're like mall security guards or something. But
Right.
Anyway, no, back to what you were saying, though, because that's when your injuries really started to exacerbate.
Right, and just to let people know, when you're doing, because that was triple canopy, right? With the DS, with the high threat protection, State Department. And was it late 2000? Help me out. 6, 7, 8? Was it?
I went over in 2007 with MPRI and the teaching side of it.
Teaching part.
I went back in 2009 for the high threat protection.
And that, to me, from what I understand, because I'd left in 2005 to go do from high threat to do the other stuff, but at that time it really was more. You guys had to stand posts. I mean, you guys really not standing posted within the consulate, but actually going to the ministries and having to get out and really just stand guards and stand places. And and that was from a lot more where I know when I was there, it was a more moving around. We could do whatever we wanted to do. It wasn't just staying static. And now they were trying to get it more of a Secret Service type. Granted, they have pipe hitters. Don't get me wrong. The guys could still fight. There's still attacks going on, but they wanted it to be looking more professional, and that wasn't conducive to your feet at all. Having to get out and stand in Iraqi hot sun for how many hours watching a door.
I mean, as painful as walking around was, standing still was 10 times worse. In standing on, now I'm standing on, temperature areas that are 150 degrees. The glue in your shoes melt. Your soles separate off of your shoes. It's so hot. But standing on that with the nerve damage in your feet, you stand static for sometimes 2 hours at a time in the same spot. And it did. I felt like my feet were honestly going to explode, like a hot dog that had been in the microwave for too long, that the toes were just going to blow out. And so it was miserable. It was honest to God miserable experience. And I dealt with that for like 9 years, 10 years before another doctor finally figured out what was wrong with my feet. And so, and while I was doing the stuff for triple canopies, when I screwed up my back as well. So now I have this pain in my feet that, is about all I can tolerate. And, in your mind, you think you're taking it pretty good. I'm a tough guy, I can take some this and that, but you're not. You're a prick. And, and I have little kids. My kids were 4 and 5 years old at the time, and they want to go do stuff. And you're like, I don't want to go do anything. I don't want to stand up. I don't want to walk to the bathroom because I'm in so much pain. Yeah. And then you screw up your back, and I ruptured or bulged some disc in my thoracic spine. And so then I started having almost like seizures, muscle spasms in my body that, that I couldn't push through. I couldn't take that pain. It would lock me up to where I could not physically move. It wasn't like, okay, I've had kidney stones and things like that where you're like, oh my God, this hurts beyond belief. But if I have to walk across the room, I can. But with my back, it was so spasmed, or it would create these muscle twitches where you could not move. I couldn't physically make my arm move. It was locked in this position like I was having almost like a seizure. And again, you think you're dealing with it. You think you're taking it. You're being the tough guy and you're taking it and living your life, but you're not. You're a miserable person to be around. You're actually living a miserable life. And I didn't really realize that until years later when people kind of started saying things like, hey man, you're not right. Something's wrong. And I had a squad leader from Ranger Battalion that, stayed in Ranger Battalion and retired out, all the deployments during GWAT and all that kind of stuff. He said something to me one time. He went to that Warriors Heart program down in San Antonio. And he said, you ought to look into this. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with me, because I didn't experience that stereotypical PTSD experience where I was in the 13-hour firefight and guys were getting killed all around.
Well, what people think
Right.
causes that, which is really different for everybody.
It is. And, in my mind, I didn't experience that, so I had no reason or no right to complain.
Well, and at that time, in fear defense, that was what you're saying, stereotypical way. It was always pushed that way. It's like if you weren't blown up or you weren't shot at or you didn't see your buddy die next to you, there's no way you shouldn't have it. You didn't go through it. And so, yeah, that you didn't know. I mean, that's how we all were. It was, well, there's things blowing up all around me, but it's not touching me. So obviously I should be fine. But then you have the pain on top of it. It's not. Your brain is trying to rationalize the abnormal shit that's going on around you. Even though you didn't get hit by shrapnel, that bomb still went off 200 meters from you. Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. Now let's keep working. And it really does screw your head up when you come back after years of it.
Yeah. And I think that like the trauma that I experienced had more to do with the long-term pain.
Long-term pain, yeah.
It wasn't really any event that happened to me overseas where it was like, oh, I have flashbacks or bad dreams about things that happen. I really don't. But the pain, living in that pain for almost 10 years, it was brutal. And, and starting to read more about how your brain actually works and pain signals in your body and all of these kind of things. And, it kind of made me realize, yeah, you're off, dude. You're not you. You're not who you want to be, kind of thing.
Well, I would especially think a guy coming from the Ranger Regiment, which there's so much physicality involved, and that's a huge aspect of you and your personality. And now you can't live up to those standards, which you talk about in Chris's book, that, all these times that you want to go back overseas, that you want to do something. And then you say to yourself, I got to be honest with myself. I'm not in the physical shape to do this.
Right. And when I screwed up my back, Chris had been trying to pull me over to the
GRS stuff.
GRS, the agency, kind of to work. And, and it's a process. It can take years to get the paperwork right because they'll kick it back and say, no. And you're like, well, what's wrong with it? And they won't tell you.
They just say, do it again. Do it, rewrite it, send it in.
And you're like, this SF 86 or whatever.
Yeah, SF 86. And
of course, it's not a digital thing that you can fill out. You have to fill it in by hand and then scan it and send it back into them. And I mean, if you screw up a date that just doesn't sync right, no.
Yeah.
You got to go back through it and be like, where did I screw up?
Shit, I remember doing. I still have my old ones, man. That was a pain in the ass, and it was such a ridiculous thing that you had to do over and over. But you're right, it did because I tried for 2 years. I think it was it a year and a half or 2 years? So like, hey, did you paperwork in? Get your paperwork in. And he's like, I did. I'm waiting.
Yeah. And that was frustrating because I finally got the paperwork right. They finally do all the background checks, the interviews. They're talking to my neighbors and all.
Yeah.
They're doing all, the process to give you the TS clearance that you need to do that job. And they finally call and say, hey, we're ready for you to come to vetting, basically to try out kind of thing. But I was in this physical situation and I was like, maybe I could just tough it out and take the pain and get through vetting. But then I looked at it and I was like, well, then you still are screwed up. You could have one of these seizures or one of these spasms while you're doing that job. And in that job, you weren't on necessarily a 15-man team. I was like, so if I'm out with one other dude and I have this problem with my back, I'm now a liability. And I was like, I wouldn't want a teammate that was physically not up to his job, that couldn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I certainly wouldn't want to go be that teammate to somebody else.
And that's happened with guys that have too much pride. I've been on a team where a guy shouldn't have come back in, whether it was an injury or whether it was personal things within his life that came back and bit him in the ass, which he had to go back home for because maybe he was cheating on his wife. Not saying that happens in the contract world, but it does. But that affects a team. That affects a team when a teammate is getting a phone call from home and he's saying, going and begging to go back home because his wife finally caught him, is going to leave him because now you're shorthanded. Now, I don't think people realize just the intricacies of an injury or not having your personal life in order, or at least not having some control of it, how that affects the team downrange. And when you're less one guy on those small teams, like you said, that the chances of survivability have just decreased because you're missing one guy. It can be the matter literally of life or death. I know I'm going really over, but it does. It really does.
And that's the way I look at it. And I mean, as much as I wanted to go back to work and as much as I wanted to do that job, I just felt it was just irresponsible to do it. Did
you have? And we talked about it a little bit, but I want to make sure I'm right. You had some times at night where the demon stuff come that you thought about taking your life. I know if you want to talk about it, cool. If not, we get it.
I don't mind talking about that, and I never got to the point where I was like, got the gun in my hand and was like, this is it. I never got to that point. But you go to some dark places in your mind, and a lot of it had to do with not necessarily what had happened in the past. Like I said, I didn't really have these demons from a specific events. I just had this pain that I was like, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. And it's been 6, 7, 8 years, and it's never going to go away. And at least that was the way the doctors kind of viewed it at that point, was this is never going to change. And I kind of reflected on who I was, and it was like, do I want to live another 40 years?
I know, pain.
Like this?
It's worse. Yeah. And
you're thinking, I mean, all I got to do is punch out and it's over. The pain is gone.
Yeah.
But then you look back and you kind of say, well, in doing that and making that decision or trying to solve that problem with that, say, let's,
terrible solution. Yeah.
Terrible solution. What is that really going to cost me? And what kind of damage is that going to do to my kids and my wife and my family? And, how much pain is that going to cause to them? And you kind of realize that, okay, the pain that I'm in is miserable, but in making that bad decision, or what am I going to leave behind? I'm going to have kids that are going to grow up without their dad and have to know the fact that my dad didn't love me enough to stick around. He chose the easy way out and took his own life. What does that say to my kids? Or I'm sorry, to my wife.
Yeah.
So I really, my wife and my kids are really probably the biggest reason that I'm still here. If I didn't have my wife and I didn't have my kids and I had come home and I was in that pain and I was alone, I probably either would have, drank myself into a coma, drank myself into driving off the road, drunk somewhere, done something stupid, got arrested, or just said, okay, you know what, I'm done. because I would have, gone back onto the alcohol. They were giving me pain meds like they were Skittles, oh, here, you want, 100-day supply of oxycodone or Percocet, or what do you want? We'll give it to you. I kind of started to get onto Dilaudid, which is a synthetic morphine. And hey, man, that stuff was great. That's the biggest problem with drugs, are they work. So yeah. I was taking Dilaudid, and I was like, dude, I feel like kind of Superman again, and then a friend of mine who was a doctor, he was like, dude, you got to get off of that stuff. That's dangerous. And I kind of, so luckily I got off of it quick enough that it didn't become a problem.
How do you even convince yourself to get off of it? Because I get off of this, I'm back in that same pain. I mean, most people would not be convinced that it's a problem. If the two ends of the spectrum are, I'm in so much pain, I don't want to be here anymore, to I feel great on this stuff, but it's habit forming. I think a lot of people would say, fuck it, I'm going to stay on this. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that my friend said to me was, if you're hooked on Dilaudid and you go and, let's say, get in a car accident and you're, just on the edge of being alive, like broken ribs, collapsed lung, crushed skull, all of these things, and you need pain meds to deal with that, there's nothing we can give you that's going to overcome that pain, because you become so used to this Dilaudid, and it's such a strong drug that there's nothing we can do. You're just going to have to suffer until you're fixed, kind of thing, through whatever accident might happen. And I mean, I'm not a doctor by any stretch of the imagination, but I know being addicted to something is not good, no matter what it is. To be, and luckily I kind of had the mental strength to tell myself, you have to stop doing this, because you're going to, I could see the path coming back. You're going to get hooked on these pain meds. They're going to take them away from you, whatever the case may be. Be like, okay, you're now a drug addict. Well, what takes the place when you can't get the pills? People just start going and getting heroin.
Heroin, yeah. That becomes controlled substances. They're taking.
And now you're doing heroin? I mean, I was like.
But guys do that. They go down that route. They do all the time, and then they end up dead or, dead. There's not another option. That what you're saying is kind of like the analogy that we use when we say look in the mirror and ask yourself if this is how you want to live your life. It doesn't have to mean that you have to look at yourself in the mirror. It's hard to do. People should try it. It's hard to look yourself in the eye in the mirror. But what you did is that's exactly what you were doing. You were looking down the line. You were looking in that mirror, looking at yourself, and watch yourself. Oh, is this how I'm going to be when I'm 40 years from now? This is what's going to be like. And that's where the mental toughness comes in. So
I did. I honestly, I kind of, and I don't know where I got this idea. I probably read it in a book, or, my wife is a doctor, a mental health professional. So,
which is perfect for you. Yeah. That's why she loves you. I know she's an angel, putting up with your shit, but we'll do that on another podcast. We'll get her on. Definitely.
Yeah. So again, my wife and my kids are probably really the reason that I'm still here. That I didn't allow myself to go down that road. And kind of what I did was I basically just made out a list of, what kind of person do you want to be? Who do you want other people to see you as? How do you want to see yourself? Do you want to think of yourself as being a good dad, being responsible and providing for your children in a safe environment and all those kind of things. And just wanting to be a better person, I kind of realized that I cannot become a better person and continue to live the life the way I'm living it. I can't do that. And so you just kind of have to make that determination that, I want to be the good dad. I want to be the good husband. I want to be this happy person more than I want to just be pain-free and a drug addict.
Is that one of the things that saves you, other than, your family, is journaling? I know for me, I do need to regularly kind of journal my thoughts, journal different ideas. It's always helped me out. I know in the book, you say that you started getting into things like CBD and acupuncture and massage, so just trying anything that would possibly work. Like, what is it for you that worked both physically and mentally to cross that border?
You know, what really helped me physically was, one of the problems is that when you get hurt in the capacity that I was working in, you get put into this kind of federal disability program, and you have to go see, they say, you can go see any doctor you want as long as he's on this list. And there's like 2 doctors on the list.
Yeah.
And then when you go see that doctor, he's like, we can do any treatment, experimental treatment you want, as long as it's approved on this list.
On this other list. Yeah.
Right. And so there's only certain things that you're allowed to do to be considered therapeutic treatment. And you're kind of stuck in that loop that they have where it's like pain meds, shots in your back, the epidurals that they stick into your back and your spine to try to reduce the inflammation and stuff in there. And then, in some physical therapy. But outside of that, there's like, you can't go and try to figure these things out on your own, because then they say, oh, you're voiding your care and you're being irresponsible. And you're like, well, if the care worked, I don't care. But if the care doesn't work and they say you screwed yourself up by seeking these other solutions, they're going to now say you don't get your disability money. Well, when you can't work, you need fucking money, right? I mean,
it's a catch-22, definitely.
So I luckily got off of the federal program. They basically said, here's your settlement money, piss off, go live your life. And so I took the money, and one of the things that helped me was I started to do what's called rest float therapy.
Yeah.
And, for people that don't know what that is, they basically stick you in this like big giant egg that's filled with maybe 2 feet of extremely dense salt water. And
And I'll just throw it out there for people that are just hearing about this for the first time. If you live near probably any major city at all and you Google float tanks, I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah. Yep. And that's what I did. And I went in and I started to do this. And oddly enough, the guy that ran the float place here in Colorado Springs, he was a former 10th group guy. And then he went up to CAG and he had lost his leg. And I forget if he was shot or it was an explosion, but he had an amputation of his right leg, I think. And so I started talking to him, and I went in and I did it. And I did it multiple times. And you just kind of float. And I can't float any in regular waters, the ocean, the pool. I've never been able to float just because of I don't have any body fat on me. I'm people out, boo-hoo you, but it's true. I can't float. So to go in there and to be able to float, and they put you in the zero sensory thing. So it's pitch black. They also start to now where they play these sounds that activate certain things in your brain. And it's supposed to be also not just therapy for your body, because there's no pressure now on anything. And it allows your body to relax and take that pressure off of things. And it allowed my back to relax enough that I wasn't in as much pain. And so that was really one of the biggest things for my back, was that rest float therapy. And then I started looking into like the cognitive things that happen with your brain when you're in those tanks, and how people use them to learn to speak foreign languages and all these things, and to learn new complicated processes. Because when you go in there and you allow your brain to relax enough, now it's open for new information to come in, and you can process it better without all the distraction going on. So I started to look into kind of like neuroscience a little bit more, and what is actually going on inside of your brain and these things. And I started to seek out other therapy. There's a thing, I wrote it down so I don't screw up how to pronounce it. It's EMDR, and it's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And essentially what it does is you have, when you really start to look into how your brain works and the electrical signals and the neurons that fire around in your brain, all of these memories and experiences that you have are essentially like an electrical signal or a chemical signal in your brain. And when you recall a memory or something, that's kind of like this electrical signal firing around in your brain. So what they do is they have you talk about these experiences in the memory of these events, and then at the same time that you're talking about them in firing up your brain, they use the eye movement or some other sort of bilateral stimulation to reprocess your brain and to desensitize you a little bit to those memories, so they don't have as kind of traumatic of an effect on your body anymore. And and there's a book, a doctor out there that wrote this book, and it talks about how the body remembers. Your brain.
Yes, I knew you were going to get into this. I swear.
Okay.
This is it's a little bit more Eastern medicine than Western medicine in some ways, but I've heard it said before, and it's definitely true that all these things you go through from childhood for you, growing up the way you did, that the body holds on to this tension. It needs to be stored somewhere.
Right.
So this regret that you had about, and you talk about in the book, when you went into the Rangers, that you didn't get to do exactly what you wanted to do, all these things that you did growing up that you regret. Yeah, the body stores that trauma. And I 100% believe that.
Yeah, and it's really amazing stuff. I mean, it really is. And, Chris and I are friends with Dr. Maurer, who's one of the top neurosurgeons in the world. I mean, I can't even believe that this dude would sit down and have a conversation with me. I mean, he's the smartest person I've ever met in my life. I mean,
yes, he's just the nicest guy, and just a nice guy. Yeah.
So I end up at Dr. Maurer's house in Franklin, Tennessee, and it's Dr. Maurer, who's one of the best neurosurgeons in the world. This other gentleman who was a nurse anesthetist, and he went to Harvard at like 17 years old and got an economics degree, and then decides, I'm going to go off and be the doctor. So another guy that's just absolutely brilliant. And then one of the guys that was on the team that discovered CTE, the brain damage issues with football players and from the concussions and things like that. So there's these three guys that are probably three of the smartest dudes in the world that my idiot ass is ever going to be around, and having these conversations and talking to them about how the brain really works. And as much as we know about how the brain works, we really don't know very much about how the brain works. But so I started to read more about this neuroscience stuff, and I really got into kind of how genetics work and your genome sequencing and these things, that your genetic code drives all these kind of things. And then there are events that can happen to you that can change your genetic code a little bit in this stuff, and how, this stuff's fascinating, and I don't pretend to really understand it. I kind of equate it to knowing how to use your cell phone as opposed to knowing how your cell phone works. I don't know how my cell phone works, but I know how to use it.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to learn how to use this information to fix myself. I certainly don't understand how it all.
So when you stopped hurting, then, which from what I'm around you a lot, I remember when you were hurting, and obviously because you would tell me, or you could see how you were handling yourself walking, but I don't see that anymore. So was it the neurology, the understanding of it, the brain telling you that, hey, I'm fine, and all that stress getting off your back, that it was literally stress getting off your back that okayed it, or was it a combination of physical or medicinal purpose, and then the neurological therapy that you're doing?
It was really a combination of everything. I finally found a doctor that could explain to me. My dog's in here.
Nice.
That the pain signals from my feet are traveling up nerves and things like that. And so this doctor was like, you have nerve damage in your feet, and you can go get a nerve conduction test that says you have nerve damage, but there's also false negatives in nerve conduction tests. And I had false negatives that said you don't have nerve damage. So I'd actually gone through plantar fasciitis surgeries and things like that that didn't do any good. And this guy was like, I'm going to treat you as if you have a positive nerve conduction test. And he put me on these essentially kind of nerve blockers that, the damage is still there, but it doesn't send the signal to my brain anymore. So I essentially don't feel it, which it does cause other issues because your nervous system, it affects all of your nervous system. It affects all those nerves. So you can be desensitized to some pain and things like that, which, people think, having a high pain threshold is good. It's actually not very good for your body because you can fuck yourself up and not really be aware of it. So it does cause some physical problems, having that nerves basically being desensitized, but I don't feel that pain in my feet anymore. And so that obviously has been a huge change in, how I physically feel, but also having this understanding of how these things work and how your brain works and all this kind of stuff has helped me with the other side of it, the physical side of it. And, I have found there's just certain things I can't do. I can't run 15, 20 miles anymore. I can go and run on the treadmill for 3 or 5 miles and be okay. But if I start getting into it, every once in a while, being a stubborn ass that I am, I'm going to try to go out and run 9, 10, 12 miles. And then you're like, oh my God, I screwed up my back and my feet start to hurt. And a couple years ago, I got this bug up my ass that I wanted to go do the Leadville 100 and do that 100-mile race. And so I started to kind of, okay, your feet feel good, go train for this. And I started running, further and further distances, and, was getting up into the, the teens in miles. And then my body was like, you're on nerve blocker basically from the pain, but it's not going to allow you to put that kind of stress on your body again. And, I lost about 20 pounds. I used to be about 20 pounds heavier. And the more weight you carry around on your body, it is just more kind of.
You're more susceptible to injury if you're physically active. We are when we get heavier. It's just normal.
But I wasn't like overweight heavy, but I had more weight on my body, and I think taking that weight off allowed my back to feel a little bit better and things like that.
Makes sense.
A tremendous amount of stretching, massage therapy has really helped. But also with the mental side of these things, the therapy has also helped. And I think that, is one of the biggest things that I think people don't spend enough time on. They go in and maybe they do therapy one time. And they're like, well, that didn't work. I don't feel any better.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how it works. It's taking years and years of events happening to you to get you to this point mentally. It's going to take time to get you mentally back to where you want to be. And it takes these reprocessing kind of techniques that are out there. Because when people say, oh, go to counseling, and people are like, I don't want to sit there and talk about my problems. Like, well, then you're never going to solve your problems. You know what I mean? People take counseling and they think of their high school counselor. And not that high school counselors aren't good at what they do, but there are counselors that do these things, this EMDR. They do these things that are essentially reprogramming how your brain works and how you reprocess these events in your life that the body is holding on to that are causing all of this anxiety and this stress. And that anxiety and that stress and that depression can actually can create pain in your body. And now you have physical pain that is actually being caused by mental stress and mental issues that you're refusing to deal with. And I think, the more I understand about how the brain works, I understand how it can be reprogrammed. Your brain is essentially the greatest computer ever created in the way it sends signals. And you look at how computers send signals and these things, your brain is just an organic computer essentially. And you can reprogram your brain. You can fix these things that are causing you all these problems. And it's going to take time. It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen through one session. But stick with it and you'll see the effects of it. It will change because it's not as unique as we think we are. We're not. The events that happen to us all are unique, but essentially your genetic sequencing is what has created you, made you who you are. The events that happen to you in your life or what kind of caused your brain to work the way it works.
Yeah.
But you can reprogram your brain, and they're actually learning now. You can change, or not reprogram, but you can change your genetic code now with the CRISPR stuff and all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely insane that you're like, I mean, I got gray, call it gray.
That's blonde. That's just blonde. It's just bleached a little bit. That's all.
It's a really light blonde hair, right? I started going gray when I was 27 years old. Well, why is that? Well, because that's the way my genetic code is written. So in theory, I could go in and change my genetic code and have black hair like Chris.
Which they're saying they're going to be able to do in the future. They're going to be able to basically have like a designer baby with like blonde hair and blue eyes, and in the future maybe even play basketball like Michael Jordan or something. It's really insane what the future holds, and it's interesting because we started the show talking about Elon Musk.
Yeah,
and he's up on all that.
He's probably the one that's going to invent the little green pill or blue pill or red pill, whatever you have to take, or the Elon Musk genetic patch, and you just like the nicotine patch, just slap it right on, get to be whatever you want. With all this, and we've gone over a little bit with you, brother, but before we let you go on this, and I know because you're part of,
we've so much to talk about. We haven't even talked firearms.
Let's say part of the, and I'm part of, as far as your entrepreneurship, I know what's going on for the most part because I've known you and we've kind of partnered together on a lot of stuff, whether it was Battleline or the vodka or now with Mantis and Morgan timing systems, the dry fire systems that you're going to be, because correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to be doing some contract work for Mantis now, if I'm correct. Yeah. But not the actual items, but the entrepreneurship, what drove you there with the entrepreneurship. And then, like I said, with the vodka as well, which I know because I'm part of it. Shit's got my name on it, but that was your idea. That was your baby. I wish I could claim any of it. I can't. And then how well it's doing right now. And was that pulled from you going through all this shit you've been through? You're like, fuck it. I can't stop. I can't quit. It's not going to bring me down. If a door gets closed, I'm still going to try something else in the business world.
Part of it was, I was like, dude, no one's going to give you a job. I mean, you're an asshole. Because my feet are in all this. I mean, I'm going to stand behind the counter at Bass Pro Shop with my feet, wanting to explode and being in constant pain, and then being a customer service guy. You're like, you help me with this?
You're much better on the phone. They'd be like, yeah, he's much better on the phone. In person, he sucks. He's great on the phone. Great.
Right. But I was, you look back at what that kind of skill set you have, and you're like, man, there's not a whole lot I can do in the everyday world of, consumerism or whatever you want to call it, and just go get a job. Well, you have to have a job. The settlement money they gave me wasn't enough to go ride it out for the rest of my life. And so I was kind of like, what are you going to do, man? And I was actually dry firing in my basement years ago, and I was going through the motions of doing something. And I was like, I just want to know how long it takes me to do that. And I was looked around. I couldn't find anything that at the time that did that. There wasn't anything that did it. And I was like,
and obviously for the audience, it's pretty hard to hit a stopwatch, dry fire, hit a stopwatch, and it's not going to be accurate at all.
Right. And you can set a pro timer to beep and then beep 2 seconds later. But, in the world of shooting, tenths and 0.2 of a second are the difference between life and death. And so some of that amount of time is kind of hard to process and recognize in your brain. So I wanted to know exactly how long something was taking me to do so I could look at it and say, okay, I need to get better at this. And if it's taken me 2 seconds to do this or 2.5 seconds to do that, I want to be able to do it in 2 seconds. So it's kind of like working out or doing anything. You have to set a standard, and then you have to, see what you can do. How close to that standard am I? But then you have to work at it. You're not going to get stronger by lifting the same weights every day. You have to either do more reps, heavier weight, do them slower. You can't just do the same things over and over and over again and expect to get better at them. So I wanted something that could show me exactly how long this was going to take me to do, so I could look at that information, kind of analyze it, figure out, okay, what part of this process am I doing slowly? Am I really slow to defeat my cover garment? Am I really slow on my presentation? Am I slow to pick up my front sight? Well, where in that process can I get better? Where can I be more efficient? And I had to have something that was going to be able to show me that time. And so I kind of came up with this idea, found a guy that was smart enough to make it work, and made it work. And it does work. And I still, to this day, I still think it's a great idea. Most people don't, or they haven't really, it's not like the business took off and it turned out the way I had envisioned it. It didn't. So what happened? Why didn't it work? You got to come back and you got to think about it and analyze it and all this stuff. And, the Mantis system didn't exist when I came up with this idea. Now, if the Mantis system had existed 7 years ago, I never would have done this, right? But I also was like, this fills a void in training for dry firing. And two, it's a job that I could do. I could run this business and do it on my own. So I'm basically giving myself a job to do for the rest of my life because nobody else was going to give me a job. I mean, I tried to go get a job at Bass Pro Shop. They wouldn't even give me a job. I was like, dude, you can't go get a job at Bass Pro Shop making $13 an hour. There's not a lot of prospects out there in the job market for you. You need to go basically create your own job. And so in starting that business and inventing that product, I was creating my own job for myself. Didn't really work out. I got beat, but that's the beauty of capitalism. That's the beauty of competition. Somebody beats you, and yeah, it sucks when you're the guy that gets beat, but at the same time, they came out with an extremely good device, an extremely good training system. So, it just kind of didn't work. And
can people still buy it at morgantiming.com or no?
No, they can. No, I
Okay.
still have them for sale. The timing system's for sale online. But one of the things that kind of came out of that was that the timing systems didn't take off the way I wanted them to, but the plastic inert barrels that I put my technology in, I thought I had one sitting around here somewhere. So just the plastic barrel shell in itself, I've actually started to sell a lot more of these to people that want to put this in their gun when they're dry firing with, say, the Mantis system, or police departments have bought a lot of them because they're less expensive than a blue gun, the inert gun that the blue guns that are out there, and it gives the shooter more time with their actual firearm. It's their frame, it's their grip, it's their sights, it's their trigger, but now there's no barrel in it, so you cannot have an accident kind of thing. I have a good friend that's an FBI guy, and he's like, you'd be surprised at how many televisions the FBI buys because these guys are dry firing, girls are dry firing in their rooms, and they shoot holes in their televisions. Yeah. So the plastic inert barrel shell is essentially kind of become more, I sell a lot more of those than I do the timing devices. So, you never know which way some ideas are going to take you, and you think you have a really good idea. Other people don't see it the way you do, but something else can come out of that idea, and that part of it can be successful. And so I've sold a lot more of those plastic barrels than timing devices.
And what I see with success being here is that, if we would call Mantis a competitor or not, is that they still came to you and asked if you could be one of their instructors to go to bases and show people how to use the system. I think that's the best compliment in itself right there. It's like, well, yeah, compete against these guys, but they must have something because they came and asked if I could be one of their instructors. So I see it as success that with what you did. And you're an inventor. We should put that on there, dude. You're an inventor. You invented this shit. You built this in your basement, which
it didn't exist, and I have a patent on it and all that kind of stuff. And you learn a lot. Unfortunately, as an adult, our lessons come at a cost, which is money.
Always, yeah.
And that's how you learn, and it's painful and it stings, but you learn. You learn quick.
But pretty much every entrepreneur in America, like their successful business was not the successful business they have now, was not the first one they started with.
Never.
almost all of them have. Yeah, they have one or two, sometimes three businesses that failed, and each time they learned a valuable lesson that made them the success that they are now.
Yeah.
And so when the vodka thing came along, I was, hey man, let's look into this. Let's see what the deal is. Let's taste this product and see, what we think of it. And then let's let other people taste it and see what they think of it. And, and we really kind of sat down and we realized that we really have a good product, and you learn in the alcohol industry, it's not necessarily the taste of the product. There's kind of two ways to sell alcohol. It's by the taste, and everybody says their product tastes the best. Well, anybody can make that claim.
Yeah.
Well, but what's the story behind the product? And I looked at Chris's story as being obviously extremely unique in itself. And we were like, well, how can we take this product, use Chris's story, but also use Chris's story to be a positive thing within kind of our community?
Because drinking always, when we drank, and Ben will tell you this, whenever we would go out to drink, it would be depressing towards the end of the night because we're drinking, remembering the guys that died or remembering the bad times. Like, gosh, we need to change that. We don't want to facilitate that. Both of us have been in our dark places, and drinking was part of that dark place. Well, how can we make it where it's not dark anymore? It's a it's celebration, or at least something positive out of it, and we're having fun on the veteran side of the house. Because I just saw too many times where guys were drinking to forget their problems. And
and we wanted to take kind of the misconceptions about the veteran community in that, Raymond Butler, who was the master distiller of this product, unfortunately, he passed away a couple of weeks back. But he was a Vietnam veteran. And my parents were Vietnam veterans. And, in the way people outside of the veteran community look at veterans, they always look at them and say, oh, all these guys and all these girls are broken. They all have the beards and they're covered in tattoos. They're angry all the time and they just sit around and drink coffee and, run on hate. And you're like, oh my, really, can the career veteran kind of thing. We wanted to try to show the veteran community that you can have a bad experience. You can have a bad day, a bad year, a bad decade. You know what I mean? But you can also overcome that and continue to be successful and productive in your life and in society and, in the business world. Or you can go be a doctor, you can go be a lawyer, you can go be a teacher. There's a million things you can go do, and they don't necessarily revolve around just being the veteran. You're a doctor who happens to be a veteran as opposed to a veteran who's a doctor.
And that's why on the back there's a story. And of course, Ben's is the first story, a success story on the bottle of each of them. But I loved it too on the packaging that we did, is that if you see the packaging, the artwork's done by his daughter. And that's just, to me, I was like, this is perfect. Family. We believe in family. We believe in regiment, which of course we got the DUI, the Distinguished Unit Insignia, not DUI when you're drinking, guys.
Yeah, every time I get a vodka
but
bottle.
The Distinguished Unit Insignia, and then a positive story on the back. And it was just like, well, this is different. If we're going to do it, first of all, let's not do the Brovet bourbon whiskey because it's been done 8 million times. Let's do something different, but then also put the little notches in there of what him and I believe in, which is family, which is his daughter. I mean, that's brilliant. His daughter's the one that did the packaging. What was she, 12 when she actually did the first one?
Oh, when she did
the first one. And I still have that bottle, the very first bottle that we tried. And the stories, having a veteran-run organization, the distillery from Ray, a Vietnam veteran who was a moonshiner. So the quality we know is going to be there. But in a nutshell, was let's put a positive story on this, man. And I think that's why when he brought me the idea, I was like, man, fuck it. Let's give it a try. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. So, hey, we gave it a try. That's half the experience right there, is at least putting your foot in the water and going, all right, let's do it. Let's get all the way in there and see if it works. And so far, 2 weeks, granted, it's harder to get liquor laws and liquor whatever, the old cronies that are in there. It's tough getting in states, but the one state that we're in right now, which is we're in Colorado. How many stores we have now in 2 weeks?
62, 48 or 48.
40 something. So every week we're adding, 10 to 15 stores a week. And yeah, that's what we wanted it to be, a positive kind of thing, and not to get off into the party world that really, when people go out and they go to and nobody's going out anymore, which really sucks. But, when people want to go out and have fun and, have a few drinks and be with their friends and celebrate and all these kind of things, that's what we want this product to kind of show, that you can have a bad experience and you can overcome it and still have a fun, happy, productive life. And every little thing on that bottle, some of it is subtle, more maybe it has to be explained to somebody, like kind of what the Jumbo symbol really means to us, what it means to Chris in that event that night. That was kind of the symbol that he gave to the guy that he thought, man, this is it.
This is it. Yeah.
They brought too much firepower for us to repel. And, that it turns into math, dude. When guys are throwing 750 grain bullets at you, 400 or 500 of them a minute, and you're Q23, you're not going to win.
But it made me smile, because I remember when I got it back, I was ecstatic to the point of tears because of the relief. But that's when I see the little Jumbo sign, which Jumbo means nothing but good morning. That's what it means, guys. In Tunisia, this is where it started. It actually means good morning, but they've taken it to the Shaka meaning because this is cooler. Just say be cool. But really what this means to me and why I put it is because when I saw it coming back, I was like, holy shit, this might be over. A sense of happiness and relief. And that's why it's important on there. But yeah, the backstory on there is necessary for people to know what that means. People that don't, they're not going to get it. They may not buy it because of that. So what? That's what we wanted on there. That's our choice. And it means something to both of us. And
right.
And again, I just go ahead.
Well, that kind of that you never want to give up. You never want to quit.
Yeah.
Things can obviously be terrible, and Chris's experience was a 13-hour firefight that resulted in the death of several people. Don't quit. You don't ever give up. And when Chris threw it out there and he got it back, that to me kind of represents the concept of never quitting. Yeah. On anything, whether it's your life or a business project or school or whatever it is that you're doing, you do not give up. And that when you get it back, like Chris said, it brought that much joy to him that it brought him to tears. I stayed in the fight and we came out the other end and we're alive. You know what I mean? And so when I want veterans, or not just veterans, but even, police officers, firefighters, nurses, doctors, these people that go through this tremendous amount of stress in their daily life, that not to give up, because, in the moment you give up, it's over. All it takes maybe is the next 5 minutes is where you're going to get that back to you. And then you're going to really have that sense of, we did it, we made it, we got through this extremely hard thing, whether it's, for doctors and nurses, it's been the last year dealing with this COVID stuff, that they're not giving up, they're not quitting, and that eventually we will turn the tide and it will start to tilt in our favor. And then when those doctors and nurses look back on the fact that they never quit and the amount of lives they saved and the good that they did, it'll bring a smile to their face.
And they should have a shot of Tonto vodka. So I'm sorry, shameless plug. Shameless plug.
What's the one last thing I have to ask you? Because I know, Chris says to spend some family time and all that, but I know the audience is going to be curious as well. I mean, there is something interesting about a guy who went from the crazy alcohol stories as a kid to now selling vodka. Like, what's up with that?
It's like a full circle. That's what I said to him. Like, holy shit, isn't this like a full circle? Are you sure we should be doing this? I don't want to be contributing to your delinquency again. So,
I got 3 or 4 bottles of vodka in my office. I got, the original kind of ones.
The original one.
Yes. Yep. But I look at it as I have control of myself. I don't let alcohol. I don't let drugs. I don't let negative thoughts. I don't let these things control my behavior anymore.
And
so for the audience, because I'm wondering, are you an alcoholic? Do you consider yourself an alcoholic, or is that just a stage of your life that is no longer you anymore?
I consider myself an alcoholic because I can go out and have 2 or 3 drinks and not drink for 6 months.
That sounds fine to me.
And that's where I was worried. I was a little bit because I knew how he was in high school. I knew that how he was at Range Battalion, and I know when he first brought it to me, I was like, "Are you sure? Can you?" I was like, "Can you sure? Can you do this? Are you gonna be okay with it?" And but no, that's what Ben controlled himself. And I don't know if alcoholism. Some people say it's a disease. Some people say no, it's not. Bottom line is that it does take the person to control themselves to be able to stop and be like what he does now, where he can go out and have a couple drinks and then be fine. And then but it is ironic that it's come full circle. I thought the same thing. It's come full circle to alcohol. But hey, it's something dude. That's not a bad thing. It's something
Yeah, and I know, and I can recognize that sensation where it's like, okay, you've had 2, 3 drinks. Maybe you're on your 4th drink and you kind of start to feel that inner wild man coming out. And you're like, all right, put him aside. Nope, not going to let it happen. And again, I look at it is that my desire to, again, be a good dad, be a good husband, be a good person, be a productive member of society. And maybe it is I feel like I have to make up for what a shitty person I was earlier, that I need to be a better person now. But that desire to be a better person to me is stronger than my desire to drink. And that's what stops me from drinking in excess, is that I don't want to be that person. And I'm not going to let myself become that person. So I have control of that. I understand not everybody has that amount of self-control and discipline and things like that, but I'm not special. I'm not overly unique in any way. And a lot of that comes from maturity. A lot of it comes from the experiences that I went through in my life to get to this point. Other people might need help from a professional to help them with that willpower, to help them overcome kind of those demons or whatever it is that they have banging around.
And to be fair, some people probably should just stay away completely. There are those people, of course.
Absolutely. Some people don't have that. And again, what is that? That's your genetic code. That's the way your brain is wired. You should not go down that path. And the sooner you can recognize that, the sooner you can maybe get off of that path. And like I said, it took me a long time to get there on my own. It probably would have been a lot better for me to do it with help, a little bit of, you know what I mean? But don't give up on yourself. Don't think that I have this problem. It cannot be fixed. It can. And because I went through problems for 10 years, and eventually you can fix it. You just never quit on yourself.
Keep crawling.
Awesome, man. Well, the website, once again, is morgantiming.com. Instagram for the vodka is @RealTontoVodka, @official Battleline Tactical. We really didn't even get a chance to get into Battleline Tactical. Yeah, I do know that from people who have taken courses with both you guys, I hear in particular, I mean, of course, Benny Glossop too, but I have gotten emails that are like, Ben is the most awesome trainer I've ever worked with, his patience. And I really do get those emails from several people and say that, they've been on different courses before, but it's nothing like what you guys do as a team.
I don't get those emails.
You don't get to see them, dude. I got to keep you blind on those things, because then you might get full of yourself and think that you're good at something, so you're not going to work as hard.
I'm not bullshitting you, though. But Paula Morgan, who happens to have the same last name, she speaks super highly of you.
Go ahead, Benny.
I mean, not to get on to too long of a story, but I kind of had to teach myself how to shoot. And so I feel like being patient with myself and learning how to shoot and going through the process of how you really learn and how your brain learns how to do things has helped me to be more patient with other people, because I do understand that it is a process, and it's about the repetitions, and it's about the proper repetitions and building those neuromotor pathways in your brain to send the proper signals to your hands and things like that to do a task. So I do kind of try to pride myself on being patient with shooters. Because a lot of people want to do it and pick it up and fire 10 rounds and think, okay, I got it.
Never.
it's just not the way your brain works. It has nothing to do with you being a shitty student. Nobody's going to pick it up like that. It just doesn't exist. And so I do try to pride myself on being patient with people and teaching them the process and understanding how it works.
He is, because I've had to have people where I get frustrated. They don't see it, but I'll walk over to Ben. I said, dude, you got to go. You got to, I got to get over here or I'm about ready to wring somebody's neck. And, but that's the beauty of the Battleline courses too, is that you get the different, because him and I, of course, we're both from Ranger Battalion, but we do have different personalities. We do the jackassery stuff that Rangers do, but there is a different personality. And I think they get both of that when they come to the courses. And and he'll be in Florida. We're getting in the sun here in a couple of weeks, teaching down at Full Spectrum. So if guys want to sign up and come see how he is, you're gonna see how good an instructor he is.
Be there, guys. Stress Fire course, 2 days, Full Spectrum Warrior in Paisley, Florida, February 20th to the 21st. TontosGearLocker.com. You can sign up right now under Battleline Tactical. Still spots available.
It's a few. I cut you off, though. I don't know if I cut you off. Did I cut you off, Ben?
No, that's it. That's all I was saying. Anything else, Ben?
No, I mean, I know I can get rambling sometimes.
No, dude, this was fascinating. I genuinely, I could go another hour. When we got into all the like brain neuroplasticity stuff, like reprogramming your brain, I'm fascinated with all that. I really am.
It's absolutely, amazing to me, the genome stuff and just the true nature of how your brain and your body works. And I got some pretty out there theories about some stuff. But it is amazing. It is absolutely amazing stuff and how your body really works. And
when we have the courses, I will always recommend hang out with Ben after, because that's where he can go down those rabbit holes. And if you like those rabbit holes, stay there, because that's when I'm like, Ben, I'm punching out. I'm going to get some food. And he'll stay there and shoot and just talk to whoever wants to talk. And it's actually kind of cool.
I also would say Ben inspired me in that I haven't done one of those float tanks in like 2 years, and now I want to, there's a place on Long Island, the float place. I might call them. I think I'm going to call them right after this podcast and make an appointment for it, because I haven't done it in 2 years, and you know what? I have a lot of things on my mind. It's a good time to kind of space out, no cell phone, no technology. I don't know if you fall asleep in there. I don't think I've ever fallen asleep. I've been on the edge.
I fall asleep in there, but when they start to send the sound waves, or there's something they do that stimulates your brain, and you start laying there and you get so relaxed, you actually kind of start to see colors and kind of hallucinating a little.
It's kind of like swamp phase at Ranger School towards the end, huh? Where you just kind of start seeing colors and monkeys in the trees and all that other fun shit. I remember seeing monkeys in the trees, flying monkeys in the trees. Just kind of.
You're not the only one, man, because I remember Nick Irving wrote about that in his book.
And Ben, same thing. Ben has his Ranger School. We'll get Ben on again, because talk about Ranger School, Battleline training, and don't sell yourself short. The incident with Rob Jabber, where Rob was probably hit by the biggest bomb in Baghdad that to this date has ever been. Ben's team responded to that, so he saw the blood in the streets. So don't let him sell yourself short on that shit. Your team was getting there to do the QRF. His team was there, and you guys were punching out.
Yeah, I never knew that. I read the book, and I was like, "Oh,
small world, huh?" Hey,
very small world, and it is kind of, the way things come full circle. Sometimes you're like, "That's just insane." That's the same dude, and that was a nasty event that day. It was. I think it was, at least at the time, I think it was the deadliest VBID that had gone off in Baghdad, or at least in several years. It was pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Good talking to you guys. Let me kind of ramble on and vent for a little bit.
No, it was great, man. I'm glad we finally did this. Long overdue.
Yeah, Ben's a good dude, man. And actually, Ben's very humble in what he's done, but the dude's a fighter. He doesn't take shit from anybody. There's a story where him and I were at SHOT Show in Vegas, and it was after the movie came out or book came out, or maybe it was a couple years after, and they did this big party for Tonto or whatever at one of the clubs there. And I left my jacket. It was in a secure room, like a club that was in a room that only we had. And I was trying to walk back in there. And of course, there's women, there's alpha males everywhere. I mean, it's a shot show. I mean, there's just, and once you walked out of the room, you couldn't come back in. You weren't allowed to, because we wanted to keep people out that weren't invited to the party or whatever. And I remember I went back to get my coat, and this guy, what are you doing? He thought I was going there to pick up on his girlfriend or something. and I'm like, dude, I'm just going to go get my coat. And it was, the party was Tano's party too. It was my party. It was, and the guy jumped in my face, and it was this group guy, this SF guy that I didn't know who he was until after the fact, which I could have gave shit anyway. But Ben was next to me, and I'm the nice guy. Hey, I'm trying to be cool. Like, dude, this is just my jacket. I'm going back in to get I'm not saying, hey, do you know who I am? Sort of thing. I'm saying, I got to go get it. But Ben, I remember he jumped right in front of me. He goes, what the fuck is your problem? And I remember it's like, Ben, we don't need to fight right now, because Ben can fucking fight. The dude's a fighter.
I believe it.
He's a scrapper. And he was ready to throw down with the dude right there. And that's when Ben actually said, hey, dude, this is Tano. This is his party. And the guy's, oh, I didn't know. And we let him in. But that's what I knew from Ben in high school too. Same sort of guy. Just the guy that he may be the smallest guy in the room, but if you're going to know you're in a fight, whether you win or lose, you're going to know you're in a fight with Ben. And he's just very spunky, but also he's very protective of his friends, and he's a great friend. He's the guy that told me to unfuck myself when I was all screwed up. He's the actual one friend that I said, dude, I don't know what to do. He goes, you need to unfuck your life, dude. That's what you need to do.
So I assume by that time he was his old self. Yeah.
No. He's turned really. Him and I were special forces together too. We both were 19 special forces group. We weren't long tab guys. Just so you guys out there, USF guys, get all upset, big deal. But we were both around ODA 9-3, and then we also stayed in contact as contractors. Really, after he got his officer's commission, is when he grew up. Let's put it that way. I mean, he's still a kid, but even at Ranger Battalion, alcohol is rampant at Ranger Battalion. Not that guys go out of crazy, because you can't. You'll get booted out if you become an alcoholic. You just can't do it. But there's alcohol there, and you're allowed to get crazy. That's what's beautiful. And yeah, we do it. We're supposed to have the adrenaline up to here, especially as youngsters. So I know he was an alcoholic there, but he wasn't a saint by any means. And I would never say any Ranger is a saint when they're at Ranger Battalion. That's not the job. You're not. It's not. You're not. But I would say, yeah, probably when I saw him again, which was been right around 2003. So, we're in our upper 30s, low 40s. That's when I saw Ben as being an actual, he wasn't the crazy drinking Ben, hard, heavy metal guy hanging out, smoking at the tree, doing pot and all that other shit. It was Ben. It was just, he was a dude. He was this dude, just a normal guy. But he fixed himself, because I remember high school. He went to separate high schools. I dated all the girls at his high school though. So I made sure that, but we never hung out, because he was the type of guy that, dude, that's the dirtbag crowd. You don't hang out with those dirtbags. And, no, he did. The Army fixed him up, but then he fixed himself up going through all the shit that he went through. Yeah, that's why I put him in the book. It was also like, hey guys, you know what? I don't want all these military books to show that you have to go through that military experience to suffer. You don't have to have your leg blown off. You don't have to be shot at. You don't have to be left to die on a rooftop for 13 hours. You can just have a normal life and still have problems that you have to overcome, or just pain. And that's why I wanted him in the book. It was, yeah, he lived an exciting life. He went to Ranger Battalion, but his problems stemmed from just what everybody could have. It doesn't have to be bullets and bombs. It was just pain. And I know he was going through hell in those 10 years. And yeah, he didn't drink a whole bunch, but why didn't he? Because he was all narcoticed up. He didn't need to, because he had all the damn pain pills in the world to take. Yeah. And he could have went down that road too. So, yeah, he's a scrapper. Ben is a scrappy motherfucker, and he rightfully should be. And he's a great instructor. That's why I love having him at the courses.
Awesome, man. Hey, before we wrap up here, I know that you said you have a upcoming GTI magazine appearance.
Yeah, I forgot to mention GTI the Global Training Institute, South Carolina. I'll be having a course there, a defensive concealed carry course in August. But they have a magazine coming out, and they picked like 8 different instructors throughout the country to be a part of it. And it's new. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I know GTI, the Global Training Institute in South Carolina, is a huge training facility. And they do a great job out there. So I'm hoping the magazine has that same success. And I thought the article went well. And it's just my perspective on what instructors should be, in my opinion, or how I think we should train people, which is not being instructors. It's being a coach, being a mentor, which again, that's, if you hear from Ben, having patience. He's a coach. He's not a trainer. He coaches people to be better. He mentors them. And it'll come out hopefully in a couple weeks. If it does, we'll post it and we'll get it all out there, brother. But thanks for reminding me about that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, man. For those who listen on SoundCloud, you might actually not be hearing this show because I don't think we're going to be on SoundCloud anymore. We're moving the whole feed over to Simplecast, really for marketing purposes. From our guy Dylan was telling me, it's just easier to basically send people over to the primary way people listen, which is really Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, because we want to chart on there. We're always charting in like the top 20. I want to be charting number one in our category. And I want to get in the top like 100, top 200 of all podcasts. I want people to be scrolling down that feed and seeing, Dan Bongino, Mark Levin, Joel Osteen, Oprah, and us, because that really gets us more attention. And it's also you guys spreading the word. So keep spreading the word of the podcast. Leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts. It's greatly appreciated. Really powerful episode, I think, with Ben. And next episode is going to be our first one back in studio, or I'll be back in studio in a very long time because David Park lives in New York. So I said, let's do it in studio. I don't know about you. Dave's the only guy I know who's served in 3 branches, as a Ranger, as a Navy hard hat diver, and as a Marine. So he's got quite a cool story, as well as the fact that he is, thank God, back in great condition after that horrible experience of getting violently jumped on the train. And if he didn't fight back, we might not be hearing from him.
Yeah, isn't that the weirdest thing? And I think it's one of the things that a veteran, if you stay in long enough, and you do all that, you see all the wars, that it's like a movie. It's poetic. Like you go through all that and then you die or you get hit by a car or something. Something happens when you get home. And
yeah.
I'm glad he did too, because I'd like to hear about it if he's willing to talk about it, which I hope he will on the show.
Yeah, I definitely think he will be.
Yeah, getting through that and what his perspective on life is after, because you go through all that hell, you don't die, nothing happens to you, and then you come back home where you want to feel safe because it's home, it's America, right? It's supposed to be Disneyland here, and something like that happens. If it changes your perspective on the country itself or just safety and your own general welfare. But yeah, it's going to be a good show. I can't wait to hear from him as well.
For sure. I guess that's it, guys. That's it. That's it from both of us. Anything else, really?
No, it's a great episode, Ben. I love listening to him, and said great friend, but he has so much expertise. I hope people listen to him. And Ian actually got some questions that brought out stuff that I didn't even know about that. And I've known him for years. So, no, great episode. And you guys out there, thanks for continuing listening to us. Appreciate it.
That's all for this episode of the Battleline Podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoperanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.